Welcome to the Published Author Podcast, where we help entrepreneurs learn how to write a book and leverage it to grow their business and make an impact. I'm your host, Josh Steimle. Today, my guest is Sarah Santacroce. Sarah ran a successful LinkedIn coaching business before deciding it was time for a new approach to marketing. Once a declared hippie, Sarah is now a business coach working with heart-centered entrepreneurs to help them question their assumptions about marketing and market their business the gentle way. Her clients sometimes refer to her as the female Seth Godin, and Sarah doesn't shy away from calling things out that no longer work for many of us when it comes to the current marketing model. Her new book, Selling Like We're Human, was recently released. Sarah is a frequent speaker at conferences, and she also hosts her own podcast show, Humane Marketing. Sarah, welcome to the show.
So glad to be here, Josh. Thank you for having me.
And maybe we should dive into this trademark thing just right off the bat, because some people know you for your books that came out with a slightly different name, and now you've had to go through kind of a rebranding process because of this trademark issue. This is kind of a unique story for an author. But maybe just before we dive into that, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background and who you are and who you work with.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, totally open to share that story because it was new to me. And so I'm sure, hopefully it will help some other authors not get into those troubles. But yeah, here's a bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Switzerland. That's where I currently live. And I, like you said in the intro, I built a LinkedIn consulting business over the last decade and a bit more. And so about 5 years ago or so, I really kind of had this breakdown that luckily led to a breakthrough. But it was kind of this moment, and yes, it coincided with me turning 40, but that's besides the point here. It was really like this moment of growing up in this online marketing world. I started my business in 2006 back in California. We used to live in California then. And so kind of grew up in this online marketing world. And as an introvert and kind of highly sensitive person, it always felt like work, it's so much a pushing energy. And yet this is just how we were taught. That's how marketing worked. And then on this therapist chair 5 years ago, I was like, well, I can't do it anymore. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be another way, or I have to give up. And so that's when this term came to me. It was kind of like one of these moments at this term, the gentle business revolution came to me. And I realized that's what we need. We need a new way of doing business. We need a more gentle way. We need a more humane way, a more human way. And in a way, it also coincided with me and my story coming full circle, because I kind of went back to, as you usually do when working with a therapist, I went back to my origin story, and I actually grew up in a hippie commune. And so kind of this co-living, collaborating, community style living was part of me. It's part of my DNA. And yet during the whole LinkedIn consulting business years, I was really hiding it. It was like, I can never bring, it's not professional. Let me hide that behind the mask. And so it was only then 5 years ago, I was like, no, this is so much part of me. I need to bring this forward. And in fact, it then kind of was brought into the way I think marketing needs to be done today. And that means showing up as who we are, bringing much more of us into our marketing. So yeah, that's kind of the backstory. And that led then to a book, and the rest is history.
That's so interesting I can see why you might be sensitive about that or say, I want to hide it. And yet it's such a unique thing. I mean, how many people can say I grew up on a hippie commune? Where was that, by the way? Was that California or Switzerland?
No, it was in Switzerland. It was, and it was even here, it was like very rare, right? That like, it's not that maybe the typical, TV series kind of hippie commune, but my parents, they bought an apartment building with 6 other families. And so we each had our own apartment, but there was a lot of common living spaces, and, we just spent a lot of time together. And that really teaches you something about, finding compromises and living with other people, and therefore also, having to make decisions in common. And so it does really also kind of go into business, because it's just kind of a different way of relating to each other.
Yeah, but so unique. I'm sure there are some rich experiences and lessons that came out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's then, kind of leads into the story about the book. And so the first term, or the first title of the book, was The Gentle Business Revolution, because the Gentle Marketing Revolution. I kind of messed them up myself now. So the idea was to really bring this revolution to the online business world. And that's why I called it The Gentle Marketing Revolution. And I wanted of course, a gentle book launch. And believe it or not, that was this year. So February 2021. It feels like everything, kind of in this COVID years is all a bit lost in space. I feel like it was 10 years ago, but no, it was this year. And so in February, 2 weeks after the book launch, I got then contacted by a US lawyer telling me about this trademark issue. So telling me, the word gentle had just been trademarked in January. So the same year in January, it had just been trademarked, and that I can't use that term in any of my online presence or in my book anymore. So obviously that was a big blow. Like, I was devastated. And
I'm sure that when you came up with the book title, you just thought, hey, like, this is pretty generic wording, right? I mean, gentle marketing, gentle's a generic word, marketing's a generic word. I'm going to put them together. Who would think that this is something that's going to get you a letter from a lawyer?
Yeah, exactly. And to add to that, in Europe, it's not as common as trademark law as in the US, probably, especially among entrepreneurs. Like if you're Nestle or, Coca-Cola, yes, of course, you have your own lawyers and all of that. But here we're like among entrepreneurs. I was like, it was just, blown my mind that this would be happening. But it did happen. And so, first I wanted to talk to the person and see if we cannot just, I did want a revolution. And so I'm like, well, that's great. There's more people talking about gentle marketing. That's a good thing. So that didn't work out. And so we kind of made an agreement. And in the end, I said, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm not going to fight it. I would be so counter to everything I believe in. And it's just, it's not gentle, first of all, to go and fight about something in a court. So I definitely didn't want to go that route. And so that meant I had to rebrand everything, because my whole website by that time was all about gentle marketing and gentle business. So if that story kind of helps any other authors, avoid any of those problems, I really hope that's the case, and you do your trademark research before you put out a book. Yeah.
Now, in your case, with them having trademarked it so recently, if you had done a search, would that even really have shown up?
I think if you search it in the US trademark directory, you will see the minute it's filed. So yes, it will show up if it won't say accepted yet, because obviously it wasn't accepted yet. But what I've learned, I've really become kind of a trademark specialist by this time. So once it's filed, that gives that person kind of like priority over everything. So, and even before, she had already used it in her business for much longer before without having filed it. And even then she would have still priority over it.
Okay. So she was already using this for a few years before?
Yeah, she was using it, even though you couldn't see anything online. And that's usually where these things show up, right? If you do a search, but she was using it with her clients or whatever. So yeah.
Got it.
The only thing to just kind of wrap this up, but the only thing just this week I shared on LinkedIn, and I think it's funny because I don't know if you heard the story with Facebook and Meta, and there's this startup in Arizona actually that already had the term Meta, and they registered it as a trademark. So I'm like, you see, even Facebook doesn't do their proper trademark research. So that kind of made me feel better.
Yeah. Or Facebook just figures, we can just bulldoze over anybody or anything that gets in our way, right? They could just buy out that company just to get rid of the trademark issue, which might be great for that company. Who knows? Maybe it might mean a big payday for them.
I think, I can't remember how much they asked for, but they did ask for quite a bit. So, yeah.
So it's not enough to just do a Google search, because somebody might have a trademark to the term or your book title that you want to use. You really have to go through those trademark databases. And I guess the other lesson learned here is beware of Americans who are sue happy, which our society here in the US certainly does seem to be more litigious than other countries and other places. And it takes all of a few seconds, and it's free to do that trademark search, right?
Right. Yeah. And again, I'm coming from the outside. So obviously you need to inform yourself with your lawyers, because I have heard also other people say, well, that law doesn't apply to books. So please, don't take my word for it. Do your own research and hire your own lawyers. But for me, it would have meant fighting it in court if I wanted to keep that book title.
Yeah. I guess there's another good lesson here, which is even if somebody doesn't have the trademark to your book title or the term that you want to use in your marketing and your promotional activities, it might be worth you getting the trademark yourself too, to make sure that somebody else doesn't come along, register it, and then sue you. And you're saying, wait a second, I had this first or something. But one of the things I've learned about going to court is it's not about justice. It's about getting your way. And typically people who have more money tend to get their way. I mean, like Facebook that we're talking about, they're going to get their way one way or another because they've got the money to back it up. And so I went through this recently with, it's a book that I'm putting out, but it's also a company I'm starting. And so I went through LegalZoom and I'm registering the trademark right now, which turns out, especially during COVID, to be a pretty lengthy process. I think I started about 6-7 months ago, and it's still ongoing. I'm just waiting to hear back from the trademark office to make sure that, and it's all clear. I know that nobody's using it. They've already done the check on it, but it takes a while to go through this process. So if anybody's listening to this thinking, oh, I've got this great term and I'm going to build a business around this term or this phrase, go and get it trademarked so that you don't get into any trouble down the road. And it's just a couple of $100 to do in the US. So, all right, well, let's leave that behind, Sarah, and let's talk more about you and about your book and what's actually in it. So when you came up with the idea for this book, like we were talking about, it was this different approach to marketing. And now the title of the book that's coming out once again is going to be.
Yeah. So the interesting thing here is that I republished the first book, The Gentle Marketing Revolution, under Marketing Like We're Human. So that's the first book. The book we're talking about that's coming out soon or will be newly released is actually a second book called Selling Like We're Human. And so what happened in this year, the crazy 2021, is this completely rebranding that I had to do. But also what happened is in my community, the Humane Marketing Circle, people kept confusing marketing and selling. So they're like, well, which one is which? Or they were bringing up selling examples when it was actually marketing, or vice versa. And so over and over again, this kept coming up. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? It feels almost like, this known marketing principle of sell them what they want and then give them what they need. It's almost like I did this wrong again for myself. And I wrote the marketing book, which is not what they wanted. What they wanted was the sales book. And then what they needed was marketing. And so never in a million years did I think I was going to write a book about sales, but that kept coming up. And so I'm like, okay, I surrender. I'm going to write a book about selling because that's what you want. And also decided I don't want to do it alone. And so again, went to my community. I said, if you want me to write this book, let's do it together. And so about 6 people said, yes, we want to be part of the Gentle Sales Lab and kind of come up with the content for the book together so that, we know that what's in the book is actually for the reader. It's what the reader wants. And so we did that over 3 months. And then I sat down and wrote the book. And that second book is now called Selling Like We're Human, as a sequel to Marketing Like We're Human.
Quick break here. Are you an entrepreneur? Do you want to write a book that will help you grow your business? Visit PublishedAuthor.com, where we have programs to fit every budget, programs that will help you write and publish your book in as little as 90 days, starting at just $39 per month. Or, if you're too busy to write your book, we'll interview you and then write and publish your book for you. Don't let the valuable knowledge and experience you have go to waste. Head on over to PublishedAuthor.com to get the help you need to become a published author. You've already waited long enough. Do it today. Now, back to the show. I love that you involved your community in helping you choose what to write about and how to, and getting that second book out. Where did that community come from? How did you build that community up in the first place?
Yeah. So it's part of my existing community from the LinkedIn consulting business. So they've just been on my email list for years and years. But then also for the first book, I started that with a Kickstarter. I did a Kickstarter campaign, and that again is a community project. It's I noticed you had someone else on your podcast recently talk about a Kickstarter campaign, and it's a beautiful way to get your community involved and have them say, yes, we want you to write this book. And so they basically helped me raise money to write the first book, again, Gentle Marketing Revolution, that's now called Marketing Like We're Human. And so from that, I had a community of people who have, we've been getting into monthly calls. And so that's how this community grew, and it keeps growing now.
Got it. Did you see a bump up in that community when you published your first book? Did that help get the word out there more?
It did. Yes, it did. I'm self-publishing. So both books are self-published. So I think it's a slower process, probably. It's also something, completely new. And so people are still learning about this different way of marketing. So I can't, with all honesty, say, I have like thousands of people. No, that's not what happened just because I published a book. But it did get word of mouth out there, and more people are now hearing about it. And I feel like with the second book, there's also going to probably be more interest again, because again, I believe that's what people want, is the selling. And then hopefully they'll read the second book after.
All right. So let's dive into the actual book, Selling Like We're Human. What are some of the highlights or the key points that you covered in the book?
So I structured it around 3 phases. The first one is being, then knowing, and then doing. So the being has a lot to do with your mindset and what you actually think about sales. And it has a lot to do with throwing everything out that you ever heard or learned about sales, and really just restarting, gaining that confidence, knowing that you can sell and not the pushy, hypey way that we've been taught. So that's the being part. And then the second part is about knowing. So knowing your offer, knowing your value, knowing your worth as well, and your unique value proposition, knowing your ideal client as well, getting really into their heads. I talk about the anti-hero. So really figuring out, well, who is this ideal client, and not just who's their hero, but most importantly, who's their anti-hero, so that you can take their perspective so that really they feel like you're on their side. And then in the doing, I really kind of revamp that typical sales funnel that I think we're all just kind of getting tired of, and transform it into a gentle sales path that ends up in a serene garden. So really in a place where you make the rules, you're comfortable, and you're just having a human conversation between two human beings. And there is no right answer. It doesn't have to get to a yes. It can also be a no, and that is okay. So just, a lot of permission slips in the book, I would say, to, say, yes, I can sell, and yes, I can sell my way. I can throw out that script and kind of RIP sales funnel and hello, gentle sales path.
Tell us a bit more about your community and the type of people who have gravitated to what you're teaching them.
Yeah, I call them the quiet revolutionaries. They're people who are heart-centered, who are, in this online space for some reason. They probably all have some kind of online business, but not the typical, let's scale and sell all these online courses, but more like, let's help people with my craft, and I love what I do, and I want to sell more of that, but at the same time in a very heart-centered way. And the reason I like this transition from, using the word gentle to now using the word humane, is because it really includes everyone. Where before gentle, some guys were like, well, are you sure this is for me? Sounds a bit woo-woo, it sounds a bit feminine. Well, humane marketing or humane selling really includes everyone. It includes everyone who feels like we need more empathy and kindness. We need more compassion. We need more human in our business world. So that's typically who comes to my community.
Yeah, I think there are so many people who are tired of the way that sales works, but they're not sure what the better way is. We all recognize bad sales when we see it. I had somebody call me up the other day trying to sell me on something, and he spoke to me for, I think, 35 minutes and didn't ask any questions and didn't let me get a word in edgewise. He just talked for 35 minutes. And I was kind of just interested to see how long he would go. So I'm just letting him talk. And I just thought, this guy isn't learning anything about me. He's not finding out what my pain points are or what I want or what I need. He's just talking, trying to get everything out. And then at the end, I was just like, okay, well, we'll be in touch maybe. And it was like,
maybe not.
Maybe not. And I just thought, boy, there's got to be a better way than this. And yet so many people are selling that way still and neglecting to figure out what really makes people tick and what people really want. It's not like people don't want to buy stuff. Everybody wants to buy things. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs things and are looking for solutions to their problems. And yet we have people who get in the middle and sell and actually make it harder for us to buy sometimes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this guy probably had some kind of script, some check marks he had to go through and say, all these things that we're trained to do in sales. And again, you didn't feel human. You're like, oh, is this a robot talking to me? It just doesn't work. It has to be, not unidirectional. It has to be a conversation. Otherwise, one person definitely doesn't feel human.
Yeah, I could have been an answering machine for all who seemed to care, and it would have been the same type of conversation because it was pretty much 100% one way.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit meta here to bring up that word again. How are you using human-centered marketing to sell your book, to sell your ideas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really that Kickstarter is probably the first thing that I wanted to make sure that it's a gentle launch, that it's not, all about me, but it's about the bigger idea. I think that really matters a lot to me. And now, so that was the first book. And now in this book, what I'm doing is I'm again evolving the community a lot. And so I have like 40 beta readers from my community that I reached out to and asked them, would you be willing to read the book and give me a review? And so I'm just kind of like working with them, and it's all very personalized. So it's not like, oh, these 40 people are on the list and I just send them, an email, a mass email. I'm really communicating with them one-on-one, sending them videos. And I feel like, it's less about me, but more about the idea and really about this revolution. And that can, you can do that about any kind of topic or a book title. So I think this idea of involving other people and making it a common thing, that has really worked for me. And I find it more fun. I would find it very frustrating and lonely to just, go out there and say, read my book. So that's why I feel supported as well by these other people.
And how are you measuring success with your book? What type of feedback do you get back that you say, okay, that makes it worth it to have written this book and put it out there?
Yeah, I don't write how-to books. So the both books, there's tools in there, but it's a lot of it is permission based, because that's really what I'm preaching. It's not like, here's step 1, 2, 3, follow that and you'll be successful. It's more like, figure out what works for you and give yourself permission to do it that way. Yes, I'll share all my personal stories and what works for me, but you need to go figure out what works for you. And so a lot of the notes that I'm getting and people that are writing to me, they are talking or they're sharing about their own journey and how my book has helped them give themselves that permission. Like, permission is like the biggest thing for people. It's like, finally, someone is telling me that this is okay to do it. And a lot of people have maybe already been doing it, but now they feel like, wow, it's good to see, because I have a lot of stories in the book of people who have successful, great businesses based on these strategies or on the more humane marketing and selling approaches. And so that also gives them confirmation, seeing, wow, okay, there's business owners out there who have built entire big businesses on these tactics. So yeah, that's success for me, hearing from people.
So it's almost more like a book about changing your mindset or attitude or perspective, it sounds like, versus exact tactics. Like, there's another sales book out there that the title is Exactly What to Say. And that's what the book is. It tells you exactly what to say. And it's a great book. But your book sounds like it's coming in at a much higher level and saying, here's a new way of seeing the world.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. My both books are talking about a new business world. So that new business world has a lot to do with personal awareness. I think if we want to change the world, we need to start by changing ourselves. And that means, increasing our personal responsibility. I'm sure that guy who talked to you for 30 minutes, he's not a bad person. He's probably a really, really good, decent human being.
He is. He's a great guy.
He hasn't had that permission to do sales his way. Because if he actually did some of that inner work and really felt like, I wonder how Josh felt after I talked to him for 30 minutes, just like, like I was taught, maybe that would give him the permission to change and do it differently. And he would be much more successful as well.
Yeah. So how are you tying the book to your business? How do you make money, and how does the book fit in with that?
Yeah. So both books, they kind of, they're not, I never wanted to write a lead generator book. So they're both, the sales book is a bit shorter, it's 200 pages. The first one is almost 300 pages. So they're complete books. Like, you can walk away with the book and you can implement, it has exercises and all of that. However, of course, what I also say is that a lot of this new business world has to do with doing it with other people who think the same. And so it really kind of leads into the community. And I have several references to the community. I mentioned the links at the end of the book. And so the plan is that people start, coming to my list and then eventually end up in the humane marketing circle.
Mm-hmm. Is your community a paid community then?
It's a paid community, yes.
Okay. And so the book helps people to get into the community, and it reinforces the mindset and perspective that people in that community have. And so that's how you're generating the funds from the book. Do you still do any LinkedIn work, or did you totally leave that behind?
It's something that, once you learn it, you have it. Of course, I need to stay up to date. So I do that. And I have an assistant who kind of helps me with that, staying up to date part, because as you know, it always changes. So I still do it for my business one-on-one coaching clients when they ask for it, but I don't sell it anymore as a standalone product. So it's something that often comes up because people know me via this LinkedIn coaching business, but it's not something I'm actively selling anymore.
Got it. And now you do the one-on-one coaching too. Do most of your coaching clients come from the community first, or do some of them just come directly to you? Do some of them read the book and call you up and say, hey, I love what you wrote, I want you to coach me? How do you get those clients?
It's a bit of both. For some people, they also just listen to the podcast and then come for coaching. So yeah, it's a bit of both. Part of my business that I'm still developing is also humane marketing for organizations. So kind of smaller organizations in the business for good sphere. So B Corps, smaller B Corps. That's a part of the activity where I feel like, yes, of course, you can have some impact with entrepreneurs, but eventually I would like to expand humane marketing also to the organizations that are a bit bigger, but that are already interested in the leverage of business for good.
Talk to us a little bit more about your podcast. What was the inspiration for starting that? Because that's a lot more work, right? I mean, doing a book is enough work. What was the motivation to say, hey, I want to do a podcast as well?
Yeah, so the podcast has been around in different forms, different names since 2016. So I've been doing that for a while now. And it's just something that gives me a lot of satisfaction and joy. And I learn so much every time I talk to a new guest. And it's just something that I couldn't give up. Does it really, is there a return on investment? It's hard to measure, to be quite honest with you. Of course, some people go from the podcast and sign up to the email list and then hopefully read the book and et cetera. But I can't measure that exactly where they convert. But it's just a lot of fun for me to have these conversations with other people. And it also helps me with the 7th P of humane marketing, which is partnership. So really partnering with other business owners and having them as my guests, that helps me develop relationships and partnerships with other people.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about next is, have you been able to use the podcast or leverage that to help you with the books in terms of getting content or quotes or case studies that you could put in the book?
Yeah, totally. That's exactly it. It's a tool that if I think about it now, it's almost like I get visibility to another level of people because I have a podcast and I can tell them, do you want to come as my guest on my show? And then of course, from there, you develop a relationship if you do. And I try to do that. And then you get people to give you quotes for your book, or you get them to host you on their show. So it's that peer-to-peer kind of relationship building that I don't know if I would have it if I didn't have the podcast for all these years. Yeah.
I've seen the same thing on my end when I launched the Published Author podcast that we're talking here on. It was amazing how easy it was to meet people that I'd wanted to meet for years. Yeah. And it's kind of funny. Like I'm meeting you, which is great. And there's so many interesting people I've met that I've never heard of before. Number one, that's great. I love meeting. It's so great to meet somebody that has knowledge, has experience that I want, and they weren't even on my radar. So that's one of the benefits. But I'm amazed that I can reach out to huge best-selling authors and say, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? And they never ask, oh, how many listeners do you have? Or how many downloads are you getting? They just say, yeah, I'll be on it. I'm like, well, that was easy. Yeah. If I tried to hire this person to give me an hour of advice, there's no way I would get an hour, or I couldn't afford it. It'd be $5,000. But hey, you want to be on my podcast? Sure. And there we go.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's quite amazing for that. So I wouldn't miss it.
Yeah. All right. So if people want to learn more about your community and what you've got going on there, where's the best place for them to get that information?
Yeah, they can come over to my website, humane.marketing. And probably the first thing to kind of get familiar with humane marketing and what that all is about is to download the one-page marketing plan in the shape of the humane marketing mandala. And it comes with the 7 P's of humane marketing. So I just kind of looked at the 7 P's of marketing and reshuffled them and kicked out some of the old ones and brought in some new ones. And so that's at humane.marketing/one page, number 1, and then page. And otherwise, listen to my podcast, Humane Marketing. And if you do want to find out more about the community, that's at Humane Marketing /circle. So that's the Humane Marketing Circle. So yeah, lots of different ways to kind of get into my world. And again, I try to walk my talk and none of the pushy sales funnel. You are free, and you are free to kind of walk this path with me. Or, if you feel like it's not my thing, well, then you can be free and go somewhere else again.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us here on the show today. And everybody, if you're looking for a different way to sell, a more human-centered approach, go get Sarah's new book, Selling Like We're Human, and check out her community. Sarah, thank you so much for being a guest here on the Published Author Podcast.
I loved our conversation. Thank you, Josh, for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to spread the word, please give us a 5-star rating review and tell your friends to subscribe too. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. And if you're an entrepreneur interested in writing and publishing a nonfiction book to grow your business and make an impact, visit publishedauthor.com for show notes for this podcast and other free resources.